Abraham. My topic is genetic modified food. For those of you who do not know what it is, it's basically stands for GMOs, which means it's any type of food, usually fruit, vegetables, that gets a gene altered mutation, which means it can either create, well not create, hold more vitamins, one thing, lots of many, another thing would be the growth is actually, will grow larger compared to organic food. All right, so my first premise is genetic modified food is actually healthier than organic food. Many of you guys hear that and think or wonder right now that's not true, but it is. And the reason being is that with this genetic modified food, scientists are actually able to introduce a vaccine into it. Those of you who do not know vaccine, it's basically medicine, and this is actually edible, so you don't have to take a shot, because the shot's actually included into the fruit. Second of all, the modified food contains actually more nutrients. On top of this, it's actually tastes better than organic food, which is surprisingly because organic food, doesn't contain pesticides. On top of that, it actually contains additional vitamins and minerals. So for example, if you're hungry, don't have food at your house, see an orange, you eat it. And almost you're like, oh, it's not gonna fill me up. But according to this research, it does fill you up. The reason being is because it contains much more food than a regular organic food. Now, genetic modified food is also less expensive. I know many of you guys have been in the supermarket and seen organic food. Actually, it costs more. I myself have been there, and I see, it's like $4 sometimes for just a pound of tomatoes, organic food. But with this GMO, you can actually get a bigger tomato for a less price and much more delicious. Now, this is important with the vaccines right now and the tomatoes is because if the FDA actually approves of this, there's been research done in Oregon, a farm in Oregon. They were feeding pigs corn. With the pigs being fed corn, what happened was that out of the 100 pigs that they have, 2 of them died. But one died from natural causes and the other one actually died from the vaccine. But little research has been done into that. Like I said, my second premise is genetic modified food is actually less expensive than organic food. It's less expensive in the case being that if you go down to the farm, you guys seen, it's actually pest resistant. I don't know if you guys have farmed before or anything, but pests are just a huge pain. So on top of that, that means that farmers have to spend less money, so it actually saves more money for the economy, which right now is doing pretty bad. They also have a longer shelf life. So for example, you go to the store, your milk usually stands for 2 weeks. With this enhanced, the enhanced modified food, it could last for a year maybe. On top of that, it's faster, it's produced much more faster than regular food, well, organic food, and has larger quantity of production. My third premise is genetic modified food can help underfed nations. And this is actually really one of the important topics I want to talk about, because with this, we see that third world countries, lots of people are dying of starvation. There's bad conditions, but that's another topic. But the point being is that with this, for example, we could take a plant down from here, from the United States, we could plant it out there, and it won't survive, it's organic. But with it being genetic modified, if we put it down there, for example, in Alaska, it can actually survive the winter. If we put it down in South America, it'll survive the heat. So this is actually really important for the third world countries. And my other thing is some countries cannot afford the nutrients. For example, third world countries. Many of the children in those countries are not actually getting the nutrients as we do. So with the genetic modified food, they will actually be able to buy it or make it themselves, and it actually will contain these nutrients. That's it.
All right, Abraham, you do a couple of things effectively. I think, for instance, that you talk to the audience pretty well. Although occasionally you have a word or phrase that's a little bit awkward, it flows pretty smoothly. You seem confident in the language that you're using when you state your position. You state it with a great degree of certainty, and I think that adds some to your credibility. There are some technical things that you really need to work on. I don't think that you actually have a very clear statement of what your proposition is at the beginning of the speech. I know what the subject is. You kind of define the topic a little bit for us, but you don't really tell us what the claim is. When you get to the first point, you said that you're going to preview what the contents were, but you didn't really preview any point other than the first one that you were starting with, and then you developed that particular point. You labeled the points as you got to them, so internally I could see that there's a structure, and I could kind of follow those points, but it would be helpful if they were laid out a little bit more effectively at the beginning. Also, let me see. I think that on some of the supporting material, we've got a little problem, and that is that you've made a whole bunch of claims, and I didn't hear any sources, any evidence to support any of these positions. The closest reference that I heard to a piece of evidence was this research, which doesn't tell me what this research is and who did that research. I think that there's one of the criticisms that exists in this field over this argument is that the research that's been conducted is sometimes limited to the corporations that have the patents on this, as opposed to some independent organization or some group that's talking about potential problems of genetically modified foods. But you make a claim, for instance, that they can have vaccines in this, and I'm going, well, wait a second. When you say vaccines, are you talking about against particular diseases? So I eat an orange and I'm immunized against, the flu, or are you talking about some other kind of disease? When you talk about pests at the end, you're very vague in what you're talking about. That's mostly, of course, agricultural issues, pesticide controls, parasites, things that might destroy the crops, things that make them either inedible or destroy the profitability of those crops. I'm not sure that that's so much a benefit to the safety of the consumer. The cost issue is identified. Again, you have a hypothetical example about how much organic tomatoes cost, but I don't really get any data, even a specific example on the cost of these genetically modified tomatoes and what they're going to do for me. The idea that I'm going to eat an orange and it will fill me up, I don't know what that's based on. This is this reference to the vague research again. So I think that the biggest problem in the speech is that the research is not very clear. I think you have an understanding of what the concept and what the issue is, but you haven't built up the argument in terms of content and supporting evidence enough to maybe be convincing on the point that you have. All right, and then one quick last shot. You got the Porky Pig exit, and we don't like that, so don't do that again.